When questioning the motives and reasoning behind such wicked minds as Magnus the Betrayer, one has to ask, how low is one willing to stoop? After all that he's done, the answer is simple. Beneath the very depths themselves. Magnus was once a knight of the Novan people. He was the closest friend of the previous Kaiser, and had fought back-to-back with them in numerous battles against all odds. However, his one fatal flaw was that he was always looking to become stronger, no matter the cost. Eventually, he betrayed the Kaiser, leaving him to fend for himself against Anima forces. Following this, he was exiled by the Novan Council, being revoked of his knight title and forced to fend for himself. During this time alone, he had a one-on-one meeting with Jared Darmor, the Mad Prince of the High Flora. According to Magnus, Darmor instilled fear into him at the mere visage of him. Pledging allegiance to Darmor, he offered the Novan people in exchange for power. Now in command of an army of specters, he invades Heliseum and takes over the castle. Murdering the royal family except for the princess, who was saved by Piston and led out of the ensuing chaos. Knowing his former brother-in-arms would come looking for him, he coated his sword in poison and feigned an injury out on the outskirts of town, acting as if he returned to help fend off the specters. He attacks Kaiser when his guard is down, poisoning him as he sends his specters to finish him off. As we all know by now, the previous Kaiser sacrifices himself using his overpowered ancestral prominence and leaves only the Kaiserium and a severely injured Magnus. Magnus claims the Kaiserium as his own, completing his victory against the former Kaiser, fully taking over the capital city of Heliseum and ruling over the surviving citizens with an iron fist. Magnus returns to Darmor and is given his next orders. Go into Maple World and obtain a new power and recover. He feigned loyalty to the Black Mage and became a commander, but only to get close to Guraru. Before the final battle between the 6 heroes and the Black Mage, Magnus appeared before Luminous and Guraru and struck from behind, taking his gem and leaving him for dead. As Luminous prepared to fight Magnus, he gloated that he only needed the gem and he was done with Maple World, teleporting away afterwards. Upon his attempted invasion of Pantheon, it's revealed that the next Kaiser has been born and is ready to go up against him. That would be you. His plan was to send the nefarious priests and get them to seal away the ancient Novan relics, turning Pantheon's barrier shield off and finally remove any remaining Novans in his path for conquest. During this time, he recruits 3 guardians to reside in the castle with the promise of being allowed to do whatever they need to continue their works. I'll get to them later. For now, though, this is where the recap ends. Let's go back to Kyle as he embarks on the journey to finally reclaim Heliseum. Tyrion informs Kyle of an ambush at the Reclamation HQ and has to go clear things out. After doing so, he meets up with Edea and Piston. After doing tasks here and there, Piston informs Kyle of the ancient Blue Dragon Cannon, which would be used to destroy a Spectre supply base. Unfortunately, the ancient Nova that constructed and fired the cannon before had deconstructed it in order to ensure that it won't fall into the wrong hands and Kyle would have to find them. Once the cannon is assembled again, Kyle reports to Tyrion to get the coordinates to fire the Blue Cannon Dragon at the correct location. Kyle inputs the correct coordinates and he hits the mark, taking down the supply base. Edea then tells Kyle about the old man who lives on the forest border named Urinth. She sends him there with a poisoned cookie in an attempt to get more information. In order to prove his worth, Urinth makes Kyle do menial tasks like getting firewood, meat, and cooking said meat to get information that he needs. After feeding the old man, Urinth gives Kyle a device which puts him in touch with the Shadow Dealers, a ruthless band of thieves that would do anything for profit. Kyle meets up with Tornero and Romero at a meetup location and is tasked with another set of kill mobs, collect items quest for more information pertaining to Spectre movements. Kyle reports back to Edea at the Reclamation HQ and finds that Spectres are indeed planning to mobilize and are currently taking over an ore mine, cutting off resources to the Nova for their weapons and armor. While reclaiming it, Spectres capture Tyron and Kyle is tasked to rescue him. Kyle leaps forward into a battle that he couldn't win by himself to kite a group of Spectres outside of town to a remote location. Edea appears, wiping out a large amount of the group. With that done, Kaiser makes a path into downtown so that Edea and Piston can set up base. Edea sends Kyle back to Urinth to get information on Victor and Treglow, two of Magnus's henchmen that reside in the castle. As it turns out, they, along with Edea, were once regarded as guardians of Heliseum. So what's the deal with them anyway? Victor was the last in a long line of famous, influential artists in Heliseum. According to the rumors, his father could see into other dimensions, which leads one to believe that Victor could too. He had fallen in love with a woman. Unfortunately, the woman had been dead for years. His love was so strong that she had become the influences of one of his masterpieces. At some point, he had learned of a magical canvas that can bring art to life, and he made it his goal to obtain it to bring her back. Magnus caught wind of his desires and looked into it himself. He realized the potential it had and requested Darmor to retrieve it for him so he could make an offer to Victor that he simply could not refuse. Victor, being short-sighted by his lust, agreed. He moved to the castle and began his work on recreating his masterpiece on the canvas. Eventually, after putting all his effort and then some, he finished the drawing of the woman, even more detailed than before. The canvas lit up and spat out a doll, crushing Victor's hopes, dreams, and sanity. At his weakest moment, the canvas trapped Victor's soul as it was cursed by Darmor to take him at his lowest moment in order to become a servant to Magnus, creating minions out of art supplies. A genius scientist, Treglow mastered many areas of study, being particularly fond of chemistry. He regarded himself as a guardian, but was driven by his secret and taboo ambition of creating artificial life. Taking note of this passion for research, Magnus used it against him. He built up a relation with Treglow by obtaining rare materials from Maple World for his work. Before Magnus set off the invasion, he sabotaged Treglow's project, which was close to completion. A massive explosion went off in Treglow's lab, driving him mad. Urinth recalls seeing him rummaging through the ruins of his lab in grief. In his madness, he declared his twisted failures of creatures to be his greatest successes and continues to make them for Magnus's army. Once a disciple of Urinth, Edea has massive magical knowledge and power, but has an ill temper towards the old man. Due to her destructive tendencies and forced feeding of poisoned cookies, he expelled her. She rose to becoming an idol by portraying an image of being cool-headed and objective, but Urinth is sure that she'll reveal her true self one day. Urinth and Popo make Kyle get some more meat and coats. After that, Urinth writes a letter to Edea going into detail about the curse both Victor and Treglow are under, and what kind of attacks they'll be launching on the Nova. Kyle goes to Edea, gives her the letter, and hears a noise. Velderoth returns, and he's a huge traitor. What a shock! Velderoth goes on a tangent about how Magnus is so much better than Kaiser, and how Velderoth is superior to Kaiser, and the guy just sucks. They clash, but end in a draw. Kaiser chases after Velderoth, but can't get to him. He accepts the fact that Magnus has warped him into becoming his third guardian. Edea says in order for Kaiser to take on Magnus himself, he's going to have to reclaim the 3 dragon key parts to remove the seal to the throne room. The 3 guardians possess the parts of this key, which means Kyle will have to defeat Victor, Treglow, and Velderoth in order to form this key and enter the throne room. Edea makes Kyle talk to the Shadow Merchants again, in which they send Kyle on a few odd tasks ranging from poison to dog food to antidotes for said poison, and so on. In order for the castle gate to be opened, Edea needs to perform a Novan ritual to remove the seal on the door. She sends Kyle to Fennel and Pantheon to retrieve information for her. Anor and Kylan provide Kyle information on life energy used for the ritual and details for the energy itself. Kyle moves back to Heliseum after being sent there by Beldar. It is when Piston reveals that Velderoth wrote Kyle a letter requesting a one-on-one fight. Kyle then does another action stage of fighting monsters, and finds that Velderoth tricked him into distracting himself so he could launch a major attack on everyone else. Piston got injured while Angelic Buster fought off a bunch of the attackers. Edea sends Kyle over to the recovery ward and discusses with Piston on what happened. Piston managed to get Angelic Buster to put on a concert for the troops. Tyr wants to ask Edea to perform with her, but fears she'll deny it outright. He asks Kyle to show his support for the morale booster, as well as asking other soldiers on board with the idea so that Edea would have no way to refuse such a request. After asking around and getting support, the show is officially a go. However, after telling Piston all this, he reveals that he won't be able to participate and asks Kyle to go in his stead. And to take pictures. After the concert, Edea tells Kyle that she's received word from Fennel that she's completed the seal research and asks Kyle to be a delivery boy again, and get the information for her. After that, there's a chunk of Shadow Merchant quests to do again. This time, Kyle is introduced to Galero, the third brother. You get sap for him, you get candy for Tenero, broken horns and whips for Romero, and so on and so forth. After these filler quests, Tenero asks Kyle to help with Edea's progress on the ritual by procuring various objects for their mineral usages. After a few back and forth quests, Tenero sends Kyle off to fend off some attacking power specters. Kyle receives a specter disguiser that allows him to go into the castle and get a bunch of information for Edea and Piston. He's given orders to clear out a whole bunch of specters and obtain their weapons before heading back to base camp. As a reward for his valiant work in breaching the castle, Cartalian grants Kyle the rank of Knight Captain. Kyle is reluctant to do so because of his tenacity to deal with situations up front, but he is eased into it by Edea. In order to be granted the title and move up officially, though, Kyle has to undergo the Proof of Greatness test. Cartalian gives him 3 tests: sound advice, talking to fellow soldiers and allies, and a display of force involving more mobbing and collecting things. I'd like to point out that the game can't seem to decide whether he's a general or a knight captain. Just as soon as Kyle receives his rank, he approaches Edea about possibly transferring it to Cartalian. As she mentioned to him before, it's more of a temporary thing while Cartalian and Piston recover from their injuries. From this point on, Kyle will be breaching the castle again and going for the Guardian, starting with Treglow. After a few quests involving killing Treglow's creations along with the specters, Kyle arrives at the door of Treglow's lab. However, the door has been sealed by some kind of high-level chemistry. Tonera creates a Regent agent to dissolve the seal so that Kyle can get to Treglow. And now, we come to the first of 3 Guardian fights. Immediately upon entering, you'll find that Treglow rather enjoys tossing flasks. Upon contact, these flasks will explode, but not for a lot of damage. When his flask glows green, he's about to inflict poison on you. His other attack is more of a map threat. Every once in a while, there will be units that show up and spray paralyzing gas around the area. When affected, you'll be stunned for 5 seconds. Keep that in mind for later. The focus now turns to Victor. Repeating the same process of going through the upper castle hallways, Kyle goes through corrupted, possessed canvases until he reaches a staircase leading to the second floor workshops. As soon as Kyle tries to enter, the collision of the staircase disappears as well as the portal. Kyle then collects light essences from nearby mobs to get enough samples to create a disordered light essence in order to distort the light so that Kyle can see the staircase and go up to the second floor workshop? Whatever. Kyle then contacts Edea. She says to keep going and take out more red and blue staff monsters before taking out Victor. Thankfully, the staircase thing was the only true hurdle that he set up for Kyle because canvases can't lock doors. Victor, unlike Treglow, is a completely stationary boss. Considering he's just a cursed canvas, it makes sense. To counter that, Victor has a few abilities up his... crease? Wood? I don't know. His main attack is to form a lightning bolt, making a small portal appear above you and sending down a bolt of lightning. Simple enough. But that won't really do much damage. His second attack involves forming a cloud, releasing a body of poisonous gas, forcing you to the side of the map. As for special attacks, he'll form a monster head and summon 6 totem staffs to chase after you and promptly get murked. Outside of creating threats, Victor has meteors that fall. These meteors will do about half your health and are the only thing that could be considered to be a real threat in this fight. Victor and Treglow are now done. With 2 of the 3 Dragon Key relics in Kyle's possession, he only needs to do one more battle with his old friend, Velderoth. A few action stages later, Kyle finds a letter from a Spectre warrior, encoded in a way that can't be read. He brings it to Anor and cracks it. Apparently, the ink used by the Spectres reveals itself when doused in citrus juice. After all that's said and done, it's finally time to take down Velderoth. And there he is, in Edea's office full of literature that he'll never bother to look at. Despite his gushing over Magnus, he apparently only learned 3 attacks. The first would be his Power Slash, slow enough to walk away from. The second would be his Spin Attack, which will push you back a bit. Again, slow enough to dodge. Finally, he has a Charging Attack. Doesn't really do well for him because of how small the room is, but whatever. Goes down like a chump, all talk and no bite. Next. After being defeated, Velderoth drops his relic and escapes from the castle, hiding until whenever he shows his face again. All 3 relics are combined and create the key for Kyle to enter the throne room. And this is where Forty Glory retires, as I'll be taking over on my actual character to showcase the Magnus Fight. Sitting on the throne of the king is Magnus himself. Wielding the Kaiserium, he is poised to give you a difficult and frantic fight. He has 6 billion HP in normal mode and 120 billion in hard. So, let's begin with describing what he actually does. Immediately, you'll notice that your HP is going down. That's because it's an effect of Guraru's stolen powers. Magnus has a force field around him that shrinks during the fight. When you're in his zone, your HP won't drain, but Magnus will do whatever he can to ensure you get out of it. Secondly, you'll notice meteors. A gift from Victor. He's got green meteors, but now blue and purple ones. The blue and purples will one-shot you, so be on the lookout for the fast ones. Stick around the corner for too long, you'll notice a third thing. It's Treglow's paralyzing gas. It seems Magnus wants you front and center for this. So, now that you're roped into this battle, what's he gonna do? If you've paid attention to the Velderoth fight, and if you didn't because he went down quickly, don't worry. You'll know where he picked up his moves from. Magnus's attacks consist of a dash, a spin, and a bunch of specials. He uses Guraru's powers to perform a multitude of special attacks, including a sword plunge, a dual beam attack. Casting debuffs like slowness, zombify, and even clone himself to unleash a second devastating plunge attack. Moving on, allow me to give you an idea of what the fight truly looks like without 5th job skills, and what everything looks like all merged together. Bear in mind the usage of Piercing Blaze. When used correctly at the exact precise moment, one can surpass the super knockback attack and the dash. As the fight continues and Magnus becomes weaker, he'll be unable to keep Guraur's powers at bay, and the force field will shrink in 4 stages, each of which being every 25% of his total HP. More and more meteors appear, gas starts appearing more frequently, and the whole thing becomes a cluster, on top of the charging and the spinning. In order to overcome Magnus, the most important thing to remember is to stay calm. Learn to maneuver around meteors and stay outside of the corners if possible. Additionally, try not to die with Magnus on the far right side. That'll make your trip back to him that much longer and dangerous. Assuming you're with your 5th job skills, this fight should be relatively easy for you, as Magnus had not accounted for the awakened new powers that not even the previous Kaiser had. However, I'll have to explain those attacks in the next episode. There's one last thing to talk about. When you eventually start doing hard Magnus, something incredible might happen. The Kaiserium drops. This is not the Kaiserion, as you might have seen in the easy Magnus situation. No. This is the real deal. The very same sword you saw in the intro to Kaiser. The previous Kaiser's sword. Once you obtain it, you're given a quest not many people have ever seen. In fact, I might go as far as saying that this is the first video from post-Big Bang that actually documents this. Now that you have the legendary sword, bring it to the former Kaiser. He'll be shocked to see it again. Upon inspection, he'll inform you that this does seem to be cursed, But if the curse is broken, it'll become the most powerful weapon on the planet. However, not in Maple World, but considering he's a ghost, I'll give him a pass. Head on over to the downtown HQ or contact Edea through the Lightbulb tab. She'll ask you to come over to where she is to prove that you do indeed have the Kaiserium. After proving it, she'll be as shocked as the previous Kaiser was. The wording of this dialogue implies that the cursed sword couldn't be used in any capacity, but that's not the case. She attempts to lift the curse, which also binds the sword to the user, as said in this warning. Back in the day, this was practically the genesis weapon of its time, with an insane amount of attack power, even without stars and potentials being applied to it, so I could understand why it was so important. After that, she lifts the curse preventing you from using it and hands it back. However, you still need to actually liberate it to unlock its true power. Talk to Edea again and she'll say that there will be a lot of ingredients needed to undo this curse, as it's been set into the sword for many years, including the cursed horn energy from Magnus himself. 100 samples, 100 runs. Little less than 2 years, no problem, right? After bargaining, Edea brings it down to 5 cursed horns. Just run hard Magnus for 3 to 5 more weeks, courteous resets can be useful here, and a return to Edea. After taking all of the cursed energy and the Kaiserium, she will present you with the liberated Kaiserium. After that, you're pretty much done with the plot. This begs the question, what's better? An arcane or liberated? To boil this down simply, arcane wins. Arcane Umber has the added bonus of built-in IED and boss damage, as well as a set to combine the other arcane equips with. The Kaiserium was designed to stand out against everything else made at the time in 2012, to be extremely overpowered with no other rival. However, even with the recently added bonuses of potentials and Star Force onto the sword, the Kaiserium can only boast high attack. It's a good sword for farming, better than Absolab for sure, but pure endgame? Not so much. Kaiseriums have fantastic anvil usages for Absolab swords, though. That's it. After 9 months of putting this off, and what feels like micro years of the world changing, Episode 4 has finally come to a close. I'd like to offer an apology to you all for taking so long to do this episode. Life comes at you fast, as they say, and it especially rang true with me. The main reason why this took so long was because of the Magnus Prequests. I was even planning on going as far as to describe every single quest. All 124. It would have had a sick UI too. However, I've realized that I should probably just cut it down to the plot beats for my sanity's sake. The next episode should hopefully not take as long to make. I've already been thinking of how I'm going to tackle it too. But for now, this is the end of the episode, and I am so proud to be able to provide you all with content like this, and I hope to do so for a good while. If you enjoyed this video, I would like to ask you to check out the other episodes of the series, or just check out some of my boss runs. Heck, check out my stream if you're so inclined to hear more in my voice. I'm slowly trying to grind my way to 270 after the announcement of the Neo update in the Arcus Hotel, as well as getting a 5-set arcane with other sorts of overpowered equipment. I hope to see you there, and I hope you all stay safe. Thank you.